Hello and welcome. I'm Janice Parente, the founder and president of Human Research Standards Organization, or HRSO. I'm very honored and proud to introduce the presentation, Developing Canadian National Standards for Human Research and its Oversight. Presenting from Horizon Health Network in New Brunswick, we have Jacquelyn Legere, Horizon's HRPP Director. And from UHN, we have Alex Karabanow, a Research and Academy Scholar of the Institute for Education Research at University Health Network. And I will also be presenting on behalf of HRSO. So let's begin. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for those introductions, and welcome to our webinar today on developing Canadian national standards for human research. National standards frame, guide, and normalize almost every aspect of our lives, promoting best industry and safety practices and ensuring the interoperability of such practices. Canada has national standards for healthcare, information technology, accounting, agriculture, plumbing, electricity, and numerous other sectors of our society. However, no national standards currently exist for human research or its oversight in Canada. In this webinar, you will learn how the current regulatory system of conduct and oversight of human research in Canada reveals the need for national standards for human research, what national standards are and the interplay between standards, policies, and procedures, how national standards are developed for human research, and how national standards for human research benefit Canadians. First, I would like to explain what we mean by human research or research involving humans. Human research is defined as a systematic scientific investigation involving human beings. Generally speaking, any such investigation involving living humans would be considered as human research. However, research involving human body fluids, tissues, cadavers, or any of their derivatives would also be included. Human research can occur in various disciplines, but not limited to health research, social science research, humanities research, creative and arts-based research, and engineering research. Human research can employ different methodologies. Interventional, for example, where clinical research involves an investigational test article, such as drugs, medical devices, and natural health products. Observational, for example, social and behavioral studies that do not involve an investigational test article, or an analysis of human research data or human specimens. There's a whole spectrum of activities that would fall under the rubric of human research, usually on a continuum of risk as it relates to the participants, from observational, educational, health services, public health, social behavioral, clinical, and other interventional types of research. Because human research seeks to understand something not yet known, participation in human research is not without risks. Given the fundamental and societal importance of human research, it must be conducted ethically, scientifically, and in a manner that safeguards the rights and welfare of research participants. Research participants are as important to the research process as the researcher, the sponsor, and the Research Ethics Board. Safeguarding research participants' rights and welfare is a responsibility shared among all individuals involved in the research process. So why do we need national standards for human research? Canada has a fragmented regulatory approach to research involving humans. There are federal guidelines for institutions receiving federal funds issued by the Interagency Advisory Panel on Research Ethics, PRE, and guidelines on research integrity and conflict of interest are issued by the Interagency Advisory Panel on Responsible Conduct of Research, or PRCR. Canada has federal regulations for human research involving investigational drugs, medical devices, and natural health products issued by Health Canada. Canada also has varying federal and provincial regulations relating to privacy of personal health information. In addition, there are federal regulations for radiation safety, transportation of dangerous goods, the use of controlled goods, and biosafety. This complex regulatory environment makes it difficult for research institutions to adequately oversee the conduct of research involving humans that may involve some or all of these regulations and guidelines. As a policy, the Tri-Council Policy Statement, Ethical Conduct for Research Involving Humans, or TCPS, is a joint policy of Canada's 3 federal research agencies: the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, CIHR, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, NSERC, and the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, SSHRC. It was developed to serve as a mechanism to control those institutions receiving federal funding from the 3 federal granting councils and only extends to these organizations. The TCPS informs and provides guidance to Canadian researchers on what is important and why regarding the ethical conduct of research involving humans. Currently, REBs use the guidance of the TCPS in their determination of ethical feasibility and favorability of human research. This means, however, that the TCPS does not cover all institutions where research involving humans is occurring in Canada. Similarly, Canada's Food and Drugs Act and applicable regulations incorporate an internationally accepted good clinical practice guideline that stipulates that interventional clinical research on humans cannot be initiated without the review and approval by a properly constituted REB or IRB. This is the International Council for Harmonization Good Clinical Practice Guideline, or ICH-GCP, which is an international standard for one type of human research, clinical research. The ICH-GCP guideline has been adopted by Health Canada and provides a basis for the work of the Health Products and Food Branch Inspectorate. However, the regulations only apply to interventional clinical research and do not include policies or standards pertaining to how REBs determine a favorable outcome. Many organizations conducting other forms of research involving humans are therefore not covered by these regulations. Previously, there was a national standard sponsored by Health Canada and developed by the Canadian General Standards Board, CGSB, entitled Research Ethics Oversight of Biomedical Clinical Trials. And as the title suggests, it only applied to biomedical clinical trial research and was later withdrawn in 2018. Of course, we also know that each province may have its own set of regulations or requirements that differ from each other. National standards for human research promote uniform conduct and oversight of human research from one organization to another, ensuring harmonization, partnership, and growth of this industry sector within our country and internationally. National standards tell us what is required in order to meet current policies and other normative references. By eliminating variability in interpreting policies and other normative references, national standards provide researchers with clear, concise requirements upon which they can develop their unique procedures. The national standard we are working on would be the product of a national consensus regarding the level of quality and specific requirements necessary to comply with all the normative references. At this time, no national standards exist in our country for the ethical conduct and oversight of human research. Consequently, human research is not conducted uniformly from one organization to another, and this often creates barriers to harmonization, collaboration, and growth of the industry sector within Canada and internationally. This is the reason that the development of national standards in human research is so important and will allow research to be conducted in a more consistent manner across the country and will cover all organizations, whether public or private, whether funded or not, and including whatever the kind of research that is being undertaken. Now my colleague Jacquelyn Legere will provide an overview of standards and how they relate to policies and standard operating procedures, and how we will develop national standards in Canada. Over to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Alex. In this segment of the presentation, I will give you an introduction to standards through real-life examples and then move on to discuss the difference between policy standards and procedures. So what are standards meant to do? Most standards aim to achieve an optimum degree of order in a given context. Because they are easy to recognize and reference, standards enable businesses and organizations to ensure that their products or services can be manufactured, implemented, and sold around the world. Standards can either be voluntary or mandatory. Standards are voluntary when organizations are not legally required to follow them. Organizations may choose to follow them to meet customer or industry standards. They are mandatory when they're enforced by law or regulations, often for health or safety reasons. Standards are all around us. To illustrate this, I'm going to walk you through my typical workday, starting with my morning routine. The bed that I have such a difficult time getting out of every morning was constructed according to certain specifications. It's a queen-size bed, so specifications define the dimensions of the frame and the mattress size. This is important because when I purchase bedding, etc. for a queen bed, I know I'll be getting the correct size without needing to actually measure it. However, there's no mandatory standards for mattresses, so dimensions can vary from company to company. Mattress dimensions would be an example of a voluntary standard where the mattress manufacturer is not legally required to follow a standard, but does so to meet customer needs. The alarm clock that works to make sure that I get out of bed is manufactured in accordance with the CSA standard that covers safety of electrical clocks having a rated voltage of no more than 250 volts. Electrical products that plug into an electrical outlet must meet Canadian national standards and be certified by an accredited certification body. These are mandatory standards. However, we know that counterfeits are still available on the market. As I check my phone for the newest Twitter updates while hitting snooze on that alarm clock, I recognize that my phone, because it emits radiation, is subject to Health Canada's Safety Code 6, or SC6, which is Canada's exposure guideline to radiation from wireless telecommunication devices, including sources such as cell towers, cell phones, and Wi-Fi. On their website, Health Canada reminds all Canadians that their health is protected from radio frequency fields by the human exposure limits recommended by Safety Code 6. Health Canada has established and maintains a public exposure limit that incorporates a wide safety margin and is therefore far below the threshold for potentially adverse health effects. The range is posted on their website. Once I'm updated on the latest news, I head into the washroom and switch on the light. Light bulbs are subject to the energy efficient standards of the Department of Natural Resource Canada, which is a federal agency. The standards set a minimum performance level for bulbs imported into Canada or sold interprovincially and are intended to save Canadians time and money. Lighting accounts for approximately 10% of a home's electricity use, so ensuring use of new efficient bulbs can make a big difference. Once I'm up and dressed, I make my way to the kitchen for breakfast. I plug in the kettle to boil the water for my morning tea and pop some bread into the toaster. As mentioned above, electrical products that plug into an electrical outlet must meet Canadian national safety standards and be certified by an accredited certification body. As always, check for certification marks such as CSA before purchasing electrical products that plug into an outlet. These marks indicate that the products are assessed and conform to the required national safety standard. When I'm finished my breakfast, I get into my car and drive to work. All vehicles made for sale in Canada and all vehicles imported into Canada must meet the Canada Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. When I arrive for work at the hospital, I take the elevator to the 5th floor research department. Elevators are covered by safety codes for elevators and escalators developed by CSA. You can see the parameters posted in the elevator, such as maximum weight, maximum number of persons, etc. Those parameters are established through standards and are enforced by code. Adherence to this standard is considered mandatory. Once I'm seated at my desk, I turn on my laptop and begin my workday. Natural Resources Canada recommends using the most energy efficient model, as we saw with the light bulb. These devices are also covered by Health Canada. Radio communication, including the technical aspects related to broadcasting, falls under the responsibility of Industry Canada, which has the power to establish standards, rules, policies, and procedures. Under this authority, the department has adopted Health Canada's Safety Code 6, or SC6 guideline for protecting the general public from radio frequency exposure. And as mentioned earlier, SC6 specifies maximum exposure limits for radio frequency fields in uncontrolled and controlled environments. So you can see through these illustrations that standards are all around us, and they're intended in most cases to protect us from unnecessary danger. It's interesting, as Alex pointed out earlier, given the inherent risks associated with research, and although there are regulations and guidelines, there are no standards for the ethical conduct and oversight of human research. I would now like to review with you the difference between policy, standards, and procedures. So what is a policy? A policy is a formal statement that is supported, for example, by an organization's leadership. It can be organization-wide, issue-specific, or system-specific. Essentially, a policy states why you need to do a specific thing or practice for your program or organization. What is a standard? A standard is an action or a rule that gives formal policy support and direction. A standard assigns quantifiable measures to the policy and is what all people subject to that policy must do to adhere to it. What is a procedure or procedures? Procedures are an instruction document. They are how things get done. Good procedures are multi-level and move from a broad cross-functional view of the procedures down to the detailed steps. May be isolated to a single department and changed by that department alone, and they are often referred to as a cookbook for staff to consult to accomplish a repeatable process. So this is an example of what it would look like to write a procedure without a standard. Let's say we didn't have a standard for physical distancing to provide a quantifiable measure. The policy statement, which is, it is important that individuals practice physical distancing to reduce the transmission of disease. Without a standard, there will be subjective interpretation on what that procedure should contain. The how would be written without a benchmark or rule or action. We know through public health directives that the standard for physical distancing is 2 meters. So now with a standard in place, there is reduction in the variability of interpretation when we write or follow procedures. So for example, in this case, an SOP could state that room capacity will be limited to 10 people to maintain the 2-meter distance required for physical distancing. Another example is training. The TCPS2 requires that institutions should provide REB members with necessary training opportunities to effectively review the ethical issues raised by research proposals that fall within the mandate of their REB. Without a standard, there again will be that variability in interpreting the policy. With a standard in place, there is a measurable action and a procedure can be clearly written. For example, staff are to be trained before they undertake their delegated tasks. Another example is reporting unanticipated problems. With a standard to provide formal structure, there will be no variability in how the policy is written. So researchers shall report to the REB any anticipated issue or event that may increase the level of risk to participants or that has other ethical implications that may affect participants. With a standard, the policy now has a formal structure or action. So this is an example of what requirements for a procedure for reporting an unanticipated event would look like under a standard. The first statement is the category, and category here being reporting unanticipated problems, and the next 2 statements are requirements under that category. When writing your procedure, you would include a process to address the requirements of the standard. As you can see, the standard tells us what is required to meet the policy. According to this requirement, we need to define unanticipated problems, the process for reporting, including the timeline, and to whom to report. I'll now hand the presentation over to Janice.
Thank you, Jacquelyn. So to summarize what we've learned so far, Alex highlighted the problems with the current regulatory system that governs human research and how this could be remedied with national standards. Jacquelyn described what national standards are, distinguishing them from policies and procedures, and then provided examples of the interplay between policies and standards. I will conclude this webinar with a presentation of how national standards are developed in Canada, how you can participate in the development of national standards, and how national standards for human research benefit Canadians. So how are national standards developed in Canada? The Standards Council of Canada, or SCC, a Crown corporation, accredits standards development organizations, or SDOs, to develop standards that meet the needs of industry, government, and consumers. SCC accredited SDOs are responsible for the development, publication, and maintenance of Canadian national standards. No other organizations have this role. Currently, 12 SDOs have been accredited since SCC began operations 50 years ago. You may recognize some of them, like CSA, a logo that is stamped on virtually every light bulb, and HSO, the SDO that develops national standards for healthcare. Among these SDOs is the SDO that we represent, HRSO, or Human Research Standards Organization. All SDOs are not-for-profit organizations, and many, like HRSO, do not charge users for the national standards that they developed. So how does an SCC accredited SDO develop a national standard? The first step in the process is the development of a proposal. A proposal is a document that describes the project need for the national standard, and this project need usually comes from stakeholders. In the case of HRSO, the project need can come from REB members, researchers, research administrators, Health Canada, other SDOs, and even research participants, among others. The proposal is transformed into a notice of intent, which is then submitted to the SCC for publication. The draft national standard is developed from the proposal and notice of intent according to SCC accredited procedures, including the specific way in which the requirements are written and expressed. As Alex presented earlier, national standards are developed from current policies, regulations, and guidelines, or what are referred to as normative documents. Recall that these documents tell us why I need to do this, and the national standard tells us what is required in order to do this. That is why a national standard is expressed through requirements that are easy to understand, unambiguous, complete, and accurate. A specific technical committee is established to develop the draft national standard. Because the published national standard must meet the interests of all stakeholders, it is very important that technical committee members represent a balance of concerned interest groups and come from all regions of Canada. Another way SDOs ensure that national standards meet the interests of all stakeholders is to release their draft national standards to the public for consultation for a set period of time. At HRSO, our public consultation period is 60 days. All comments and suggestions received from the public are addressed by the technical committee, and the draft national standard is revised if necessary to produce the final national standard. The SCC undergoes a review of the final national standard prior to publishing it in order to ensure that it fulfills all of SCC's accreditation requirements. Published national standards are accessible to the public for use free of charge, as is the case with HRSO, and are maintained at regular intervals and revised when there are changes to or new normative documents. All decisions made during national standard development use the process of consensus decision-making. In general, consensus decision-making is a process for groups to generate widespread agreement in a way that respects the contributions of all participants. Why do we use consensus decision-making? We use it to ensure that all opinions, ideas, and concerns are taken into account, and to find solutions that address all members' views, including those of minority groups. Consensus decision-making processes all share the following elements. The process is inclusive, As many stakeholders as possible are involved in group discussions. It's participatory. All participants are allowed a chance to contribute to the discussion. It's collaborative. The group constructs proposals with input from all interest group members. It's agreement seeking. The goal is to generate as much agreement as possible. And most importantly, the process is cooperative. Consensus participants are encouraged to keep the good of the whole group in mind when making decisions. National standards developed by HRSO impact all Canadians conducting, overseeing, and participating in human research. We encourage everyone to participate in their development. There are 2 ways that you can do this. You can become a member of an HRSO technical committee. Currently, HRSO has 3 technical committees that develop national standards pertaining to them. The first is Quality Systems and Research Integrity Management. The second, Research Ethics Review and Oversight. And the third, Conduct of Human Research. We are always looking for progressive visionaries to contribute their expertise to our technical committees and to collectively interpret, frame, and reform Canada's human research landscape. If you would like to participate in the development of national standards with HRSO, please reach out to Alex, Jacquelyn, or me, and we will be providing our contact information at the end of this presentation. You can also participate in public consultation or review of the draft national standard. To be notified of HRSO's public consultation periods, please consult our website, which is listed here. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or join our LinkedIn group, Human Research Accreditation in Canada. We are committed to regularly informing the public of when our draft national standards are available for public consultation through social media so that we can get as many viewpoints as possible. HRSO is a niche SDO. Although it is accredited by SCC to develop national standards in any field, it only develops national standards that pertain to human research. HRSO is currently developing the national standard, the development of a human research protection program. It is slated to go out for public consultation in August 2020. There are 4 other notices of intent that we have published, and we will be developing these national standards over the next year or so. We have approximately 6 other notices of intent that we will publish before the end of this year. We would be honored to work with you in their development. We heard from Alex earlier that national standards promote uniform conduct and oversight of human research from one organization to another and from one province to another. When we think of the researcher or the REB member, when they adhere to procedures that comply with national standards, they are assured that they are meeting and often exceeding the current policies, regulations, and guidelines for human research. And when an institution follows procedures in compliance with all national standards, it raises the level of quality of the research they conduct and increases the protections of the research participants enrolled in their studies. And when all Canadian institutions do the same, we can work with each other because we are all conducting and overseeing human research uniformly. What benefits can researchers, REBs, and institutions derive from national standards? For researchers, national standards reduce the variability of interpretation when writing or following procedures. National standards break down barriers to interoperability, leading to harmonization, collaboration, and partnership. National standards promote regional or specialty REBs and prevent delays in multi-center trial management. National standards provide assurance that all ethical and regulatory requirements are being met or exceeded, and they promote successful inspections by regulators and research sponsors. For regulators and funding agencies, national standards broaden the inspection capabilities of Health Canada. They provide funding agencies further assurance that commitments are being met by researchers and institutions. And national standards help our government oversee a regulatory environment that promotes the competitiveness of Canadian businesses and ensures the safety of Canadians. For the public, national standards provide assurance that human research is being conducted safely and ethically. National standards provide assurance that safeguards are in place to protect the well-being of the public when they choose to participate in research. And national standards promote trust in human researchers and confidence in the data they produce. And finally, a few words about accreditation. The assessment of conformity to national standards in our industry is called accreditation. Take HSO, for example, or Health Standards Organization. This SDO develops national standards for healthcare. Its sister company, Accreditation Canada, is the organization that conducts conformity assessments based on HSO's national standards. Similarly, HRSO develops national standards for human research. Its sister company, Human Research Accreditation Canada, or HRA Canada, is the organization that conducts conformity assessments. Accreditation based on national standards, like the program offered by HRA Canada, provides assurance that national standards are employed in an institution's procedures. Accreditation is a demonstration of transparency and accountability for institutions regarding the conduct and oversight of their human research. Accreditation is a worldwide public affirmation of quality. And most important of all, accreditation promotes interoperability between institutions, promoting pan-Canadian harmonization and collaboration. On behalf of Jacquelyn, Alex, and HRSO, I wish to thank you for attending this webinar. Please feel free to visit our website for more information on the development of national standards for human research. Now, if you have any questions for Jacquelyn, Alex, or me, you can reach out to us through our emails presented on this slide. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.